I'm a 29-year-old woman who wanted to treat my mom, my best friend, to a dream vacation in Greece after a big promotion. She'd sacrificed so much for me growing up as a single mother in Charleston, South Carolina. But when I invited her, she insisted on bringing her new husband of 3 years, David, and his 2 teenage kids, a family I barely knew and who had never made an effort with me. Reluctantly, I agreed, wanting to make her happy. Then, in Athens, my stepdad had the audacity to demand I share my hotel room with his kids, so he and mom could have privacy, and act as their built-in babysitter on the trip I was fully funding. His disrespect, coupled with my mom's passive enabling behavior, pushed me to my limit, so I made a choice. This isn't just a vacation gone wrong story. It's about entitlement, financial exploitation, and the moment I finally drew an unbreakable boundary. Witness the fallout as I secretly check out of our shared hotel, leaving them to deal with the consequences of their disrespect and lack of funds in a foreign country. From a heartfelt gift to a shocking display of narcissistic behavior, this story is for anyone who's ever felt taken for granted and decided enough was enough. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch! The scent of salty sea air and ancient stone, that's what I'd imagined for my dream trip to Greece. A trip I'd meticulously planned and saved for, a special gift for the most important woman in my life, my mother, Eleanor. I'm Chloe, 29, and after recently landing a significant promotion at my marketing firm in Charleston, South Carolina, my first thought was to repay mom for a lifetime of sacrifices. Growing up, it was just her and me. My dad passed away from a sudden illness when I was barely 3, leaving mom to navigate the choppy waters of single parenthood. She worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs, always putting my needs first, never once making me feel like a burden. She was and still is my best friend, my rock. This trip to Greece, a place she'd always dreamed of visiting, was meant to be a heartfelt thank you, a chance for us to create beautiful memories together. I could have invited friends, made it a girls' trip, but this was specifically for mom. That's how much she meant to me, so when I excitedly asked her if she'd like to go, her eyes lit up. Greece? Oh, Chloe, that would be a dream. But then her expression shifted. I'd love to, honey, but only if David and the kids can come too. David, my stepfather. Mom had married him 3 years ago, after a whirlwind 2-year romance that had caught everyone, including her own parents, by surprise. He was 49, a few years younger than mom, who's 52, and came with 2 teenage children from a previous marriage, Jessica, 16, and Ben, 14. I'd had no idea mom was even dating anyone until she suddenly announced their engagement. By then, they were practically already married, tying the knot within 6 months. David wasn't an overtly unpleasant guy, not in a cartoon villain sort of way, but we'd never clicked. There was a subtle undercurrent of something, perhaps a territoriality over mom's attention, or maybe he just never bothered to make an effort to connect with me or my maternal grandparents. Whenever I'd visit mom at their new house in Mount Pleasant, our interactions were strained, minimal. He and his kids always felt like mom's separate life, one I wasn't truly a part of. His ex-wife, according to mom, was a conniving and selfish woman who didn't care about him or the kids, which was supposedly why she didn't have custody. Mom never elaborated further, and I never pressed. It wasn't my business. David had been divorced for almost 2 years when he met mom. They all seemed fine, a seemingly cohesive unit. So when mom made her request to bring her entire new family on the Greek vacation I was planning and paying for, my heart sank a little. It wasn't the trip I'd envisioned. 4 flight tickets instead of 2. 2 hotel rooms instead of 1. The expense would be considerably more, and my cherished one-on-one time with mom would be diluted. But the core purpose of this trip was to make her happy, to repay her for everything. If this is what she wanted, who was I to say no? My recent raise meant I could, luckily, afford to splurge a little, so after a few days of mulling it over, I agreed. Okay, mom, I'd said, forcing a smile. The more the merrier, I guess. This was my attempt at being the bigger person, at people-pleasing for my mother's sake, a pattern I was slowly beginning to recognize in myself. After nearly 2 weeks of meticulous planning, booking flights, reserving charming boutique hotels in Athens and Santorini, arranging tours, we finally boarded our flight. We landed in Athens last afternoon, all of us tired and jet-lagged. We checked into our hotel near the Plaka district. I'd booked 2 adjoining rooms. The plan in my mind was for Mom and David to take one, and for me to take the other, with Jessica and Ben perhaps taking turns on a rollaway bed or sharing if needed. When we got to the rooms, the kids, Jessica and Ben, immediately crashed on the twin beds in my room for a nap, while Mom and David took the room beside ours. I was a little surprised. I'd expected Mom to want her new family unit together, but I figured it was just for convenience while they napped. Once they woke up, they'd sort themselves out. They didn't. Even after everyone was up and showered, ready to explore a bit before dinner, Jessica and Ben's luggage remained firmly planted in my room. I didn't mind too much at that point. We were all excited to be in Athens, and the initial awkwardness was overshadowed by the novelty of our surroundings. We had a lovely, albeit slightly chaotic, first evening exploring the local tavernas. It was when we got back to the hotel that evening that the real issue surfaced. The kids headed straight back to my room, making themselves comfortable. I decided it was time to talk to Mom and David. I pulled them aside in the hotel lobby, a quiet marbled space away from the kids' earshot. "Hey," I began, trying to sound casual, "I think it's probably time for Jessica and Ben to switch rooms, right? They can bunk with you guys." David just laughed, a short, sharp, dismissive laugh that immediately set my teeth on edge. "Chloe, darling," he said, his tone patronizing, "if you wanted to give your mother such a wonderful vacation, to give her a break from her day-to-day exhausted life, then surely you also took into consideration that she'd need babysitting services, yes?" He was still chuckling, as if this were the most hilarious joke in the world. My mom just smiled weakly beside him, not meeting my eyes. Her passive enabling of his behavior was a familiar, painful pattern. I was stunned. "Babysitting services? I don't understand what you're talking about, David," I stammered. He elaborated, his smile widening. "This vacation, your generous gift to your mother, is so she can relax, have some time off. The least you can do, as the one who organized and is paying for all this, is to look after the kids. Let them share a room with you. It'll give Eleanor and me some much-needed privacy, some quality time together." He winked. Both he and Mom then beamed at me, thanked me again for my incredible generosity, and then turned to head towards the elevator, leaving me speechless and fuming in the lobby. I stood there, my mind reeling. I was already doing the most I could do. I was paying for everything: flights, hotels, meals, activities, for 4 people, when I had only ever intended to treat my mother. I was willingly sacrificing my precious one-on-one time with her. And now, they expected me to be an unpaid nanny and share my personal space with 2 teenagers I barely knew. Also, they could have a romantic getaway on my dime? The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. If Mom had wanted a break from her family, she should have left them at home and come with me by herself, as I'd originally planned. This was blatant financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. After a few minutes of seething, I went up to their room, determined to talk some sense into them. David answered the door, his expression hardening when he saw me. Mom hovered in the background, looking anxious. I tried to explain, calmly at first, that while I was happy to have them all here, sharing my room with 2 teenagers for the entire trip wasn't what I'd signed up for, nor was it fair to expect me to be their constant supervisor. David cut me off, his voice no longer jovial but cold and sharp. "Point blank, Chloe," he said, his eyes like chips of ice. "You have to share the room with the kids. They've earned this break just as much as your mother has. They've had a tough year with school, and this vacation is important for them too." He then had the audacity to shut the door right in my face before I could utter another word. My mom? She hadn't said a thing, hadn't even met my gaze. Her silence, her unwillingness to stand up for me, or even for common decency, was a betrayal almost as deep as David's disrespect. The ridiculousness of his statement, that they'd earned this break when it was my promotion, my hard work, my money that was funding this entire trip, was almost comical in its narcissistic delusion. Instead of gratitude for my generosity, they were treating me like an inconvenient but necessary appendage to their family vacation. Fuming, I went back to my room. Jessica and Ben were sprawled on the beds, engrossed in their phones, oblivious. I thought about trying a different tactic with them, asking them directly if they'd be willing to switch rooms. But then I overheard Jessica on a video call with a friend complaining in a whiny voice, "Yeah," Dad said, "we have to stay in whichever room Chloe's in. It's kinda lame, but whatever, free trip." So they knew. Their parents had explicitly told them to impose on me. It wasn't their fault their dad was being a manipulative jerk, but their casual acceptance of the situation, their lack of any consideration for my comfort or privacy, still stung. I let them be and retreated to the small balcony, trying to figure out what to do. For the next couple of hours, as the Athens cityscape twinkled to life, I thought long and hard. The anger, the frustration, the profound sense of being disrespected and taken for granted, churned within me. And then, around 10 p.m., when I was sure the kids were asleep, Ben was already snoring softly. A plan, a bold and beautifully simple plan, began to form. I realized the only way out of this situation, the only way to reclaim my vacation and my sanity, was to leave them to their own devices. They had been disrespectful, selfish, and had shown zero appreciation for my generosity. There was no way my stepdad was going to boss me around on a vacation I was paying for. I didn't think twice. My bags, thankfully, were still mostly unpacked from the flight. I quietly, methodically, gathered my belongings, my passport, my wallet. I tiptoed out of the room, leaving Jessica and Ben sound asleep. Downstairs, I approached the night manager at the front desk. I explained with a calm I didn't feel that I was checking out, but that the occupants of my room and the adjoining room, giving their names and room numbers, would be staying and would be settling the bill for both rooms upon their departure. The hotel staff, seeing a well-dressed, composed young woman, didn't question me much. They likely assumed it was a pre-arranged family matter. It was a little past midnight. After a quick search on my phone, I found another hotel, a charming boutique place a few miles away in the Monastiraki district. I was lucky, an Uber arrived within minutes. Half an hour later, I was checking into my new room, a room all to myself. A room with a stunning view of the Acropolis, a room where I could finally breathe. The relief was immense. Now that I had shed the financial burden of my mother and her entitled new family, I could finally afford to spend all that money on myself, to truly enjoy the vacation I had worked so hard for. I had a blissful, uninterrupted night's sleep. The first thing I did the next morning was book myself a full-body massage at the hotel spa. I was determined to put myself at ease, to fully embrace the solo vacation I was now on. I'd already blocked David and my mother on my phone the night before, so I wasn't worried about them contacting me directly. There was no way they'd be able to find out where I was. I was having the time of my life, finally relaxing, finally enjoying Athens. That was, until a couple of hours ago, during a leisurely lunch at a picturesque taverna, I finally heard from my mother. She'd created a fake Instagram account, a desperate, almost pathetic move, to get through to me. Her message was a torrent of accusations and guilt-tripping. How could I be so cruel to abandon them, especially her? Abandoning my family wasn't the way to go. If I'd been so offended, I should have waited until morning, confronted them, discussed it like a family, until we reached a conclusion everyone would be pleased with. As if that was ever going to happen with David. Instead, she wailed. I had chosen to abandon them in a strange country, knowing they didn't have any money on them at that moment. Their credit cards, apparently, weren't working internationally, a detail they'd conveniently forgotten to check before leaving, or perhaps had always intended for me to cover everything. The hotel staff, she claimed, was already hounding them for money since they'd been talking about checking out, only to discover I'd left in the middle of the night without telling anyone. Essentially, they had no money, and would soon be thrown out of the hotel if they couldn't confirm payment for the rooms, since I had, before I left, officially transferred the responsibility for both rooms to them. I couldn't be held responsible if anything went south. She was incredibly disappointed in me, hadn't expected this juvenile and immature behavior, and demanded I come back immediately to sort things out and bail them out. That exact entitlement, that expectation that I should fix the mess their behavior had created, was what had pissed me off in the first place. In the heat of the moment, I messaged her back, my thumbs flying across the screen. You're an adult, Mom. You can sort things out on your own. Ask your husband for help, since he's the one you rely on for everything now, and he's the one who caused this mess with his disgusting disrespect. That, predictably, infuriated her. Her reply was swift and venomous. She wished she'd never even agreed to accompany me on this vacation. She should have known I was jealous of her new life, her new family, and that's why I was going out of my way to trouble them. Jealous? I wasn't jealous. I was profoundly disappointed. Disappointed that she had chosen this man, this family, over her own daughter's comfort and respect. Disappointed that she hadn't stood up for me when her husband was being so egregiously rude, so blatantly exploitative, right in front of her. That's okay, I'm an adult now. But what's not cool is being disrespected by people who are counting on my generosity, my dime, and her not even bothering to defend me. This wasn't my fault. My reaction was how any sane human being in my situation would react. The narcissistic injury I'd inflicted by reclaiming my autonomy and leaving them to face the consequences of their actions was clearly too much for their entitled minds to handle. The audacity of my mother's accusations, that I was jealous, that I was deliberately trying to trouble them, almost made me laugh. Jealous of what? Her new husband who treated her own daughter like an indentured servant. Her 2 teenage stepchildren who clearly couldn't care less about anyone but themselves. No, I wasn't jealous, I was liberated. Liberated from the expectation that I had to constantly cater to their whims, their entitlements, all while footing the bill. I didn't apologize to my mother, nor did I rush back to their hotel to bail them out. After that last venomous exchange on Instagram, I simply blocked her fake account too. I knew if I didn't, she'd just keep creating new ones, new avenues to harass me. I realized with a clarity that was both painful and empowering, that the mother I had idolized, the one I thought was my best friend, had made her choice. She had chosen her new family, her new husband, over me, over basic respect, over common decency. And if she was too blind, too codependent, or too intimidated by David to see how utterly unacceptable their behavior was, then that was her problem, not mine. I didn't owe them an explanation for leaving. My actions were a direct consequence of their disrespect. The only thing I regretted was ever letting her convince me to bring them along in the first place. That was my mistake. A lesson learned the hard way about the limits of filial piety when faced with blatant exploitation. It's been a whole day since that exchange, and I haven't responded further, nor have I unblocked her. She'll just have to keep texting into the void if she creates another account. I've muted all unknown numbers. I'm enjoying my solo trip, truly enjoying it. The full-body massage at the spa was divine. I've wandered through the ancient agora, marveled at the Parthenon, eaten incredible souvlaki at a tiny family-run taverna, and sipped iced fraps in sun-drenched cafes. All without a single resentful teenager or an entitled stepdad in sight. The peace, the freedom, it's intoxicating. This morning, however, there was a new development. My mom, with the rest of her entourage in tow, actually showed up at the lobby of my new hotel. They must have gone to considerable effort to track me down. They apparently threw a massive tantrum when the front desk staff, quite rightly, refused to give them my room number or even confirm I was a guest, citing normal hotel privacy policies. I don't know why my mother was so surprised by that. It's standard procedure everywhere. The concierge, a very polite but firm young man named Nikos, eventually called my room, explaining the situation. I sighed, a familiar weariness washing over me. I just wanted this to end. I went down to the lobby. Mom looked furious, her face flushed. David, my stepdad, looked even angrier, practically vibrating with indignation. Jessica and Ben just looked sullen and bored as usual. Mom immediately pulled me aside, launching into another tirade about what I'd done, how I'd humiliated them, how I'd abandoned them. Apparently, they had managed to check out of the previous hotel by coordinating with their bank back in the States and getting some emergency funds wired to pay the bill. So they weren't exactly destitute despite her earlier dramatic pronouncements. Now, she demanded to know why I'd left them so abruptly. I don't think I owed them an explanation, not really. But I gave her one anyway, my voice cold and even. I recounted David's disrespectful babysitting services comment, his dismissive laughter, his demand that I share my room with his children, his slamming the door in my face. I watched as David's face grew more and more sour, more and more sonorous as I spoke. He looked like he was ready to burst with annoyance, but I didn't care. It was his own damn fault they had to suffer, if you can call being forced to pay for your own 5-star hotel room suffering. If he'd just been polite, just shown a modicum of respect and gratitude from the beginning, none of this would have happened. It was pointless for him to make faces at me now, to try and gaslight me into feeling guilty. It was also pointless for my mother to then lecture me about family values and morals, which she promptly did. She told me what I'd done was unacceptable. that my chosen method of dealing with the situation was not only humiliating for them, but also a pathetic move on my part, making me look like a coward too afraid to talk to her own family. That's when I had a bit of an outburst myself. "Family?" I almost yelled, drawing a few curious glances from other hotel guests. "Mom, we are not a family, not in any meaningful sense of the word. First of all, you lied to me. You hid this so-called family of yours from me, from our own relatives for years. You only deemed it important enough to let us know when you were about to get married. Not only that, but you and David have never made an effort to make me feel like part of your family. So no, I don't owe you or him or his children anything. You should have just been glad I offered to take you on this vacation for your sake. But if you were too blind, too entitled, to even appreciate that basic gesture of love and repayment for everything you did for me growing up, then so be it." I told her to her face that now I didn't want to see her anymore, not for a long while. I wanted them to leave me alone for the rest of my trip. She tried to demand that I book their flight tickets back home to Charleston. I refused. "I did what I promised, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "I brought you to Greece. If you couldn't appreciate that, if you couldn't ensure your husband treated me with basic respect on a trip I paid for, then I'm not some fool who's going to go out of her way to help you further. You are both adults. You have your own money. If you want to take me for granted, then you can kiss my offer of a fully funded Greek holiday goodbye." There was some more bickering after that, mostly from David, who kept shooting me the nastiest looks imaginable, as if I were the one who had behaved appallingly. But eventually, he had the good sense to intervene before Mom completely lost it, and he steered them all away. As they left, I felt a profound sense of finality. A couple of hours have passed since then. I'm now on my way to meet an old college friend who lives here in Athens. She reached out when she saw my Instagram stories, the ones without my mother and her new family. Hopefully Mom, David, and the kids will just fly back home and leave me to enjoy the rest of my well-earned vacation in peace. I really have no interest in continuing this unnecessary, draining fight. This experience, as awful as parts of it have been, has been a powerful lesson in boundary formation and recognizing narcissistic entitlement. So, it turns out I was wrong about my mother letting go of this as easily as I had thought. Or perhaps, more accurately, I was wrong about the reason she wouldn't let it go. 2 days after our dramatic confrontation in my hotel lobby, just as I was about to leave my room to roam a little around the city on my own, I received a call from the hotel reception. My mother was back. This time, it was just her. No David, no kids. I sighed, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. I just wanted an end to this tiff so I could finally, truly, have fun on my vacation. I agreed to meet her in the lobby. She looked different, more upset than angry. The fight seemed to have gone out of her. She started by apologizing genuinely for losing her temper, for acting entitled. She said she hadn't even realized she was behaving that way until our last argument. She then explained that she and David had been looking forward to this trip as a break, a chance to de-stress. They'd been going through a very tense, rough patch in their marriage before I'd invited her to Greece. She'd seen my offer as an opportunity, not just for a vacation, but to try and build some lasting bonds between all of us, because she loved all of us equally, a statement I privately doubted, and wanted us to be a part of each other's lives. However, she admitted, she didn't know if that was the right way to go anymore. Clearly, I didn't get along with David, and he, she now conceded, didn't seem to like me either. They'd had another nasty fight after they left my hotel the other day. He had accused her of raising me terribly. He'd even crossed a line, she said, her voice trembling, when he told her that his ex-wife had been a better mother than she had ever been. This, she explained, was a particularly cruel blow, as his ex-wife would regularly abandon her young children at home for hours on end while she went out, which was the primary reason for their divorce. For him to compare my mother to that woman, all because I had decided to stand up for myself against his disrespect, was taking things way too far. My mother said she still loved David, so she was okay with that, a statement that screamed learned helplessness and a deeply unhealthy trauma bond to me. But the reason she'd visited me today was to tell me that they were all flying back home to Charleston the next day. She was sorry, she said, for her behavior. She'd been stressed about her marriage, and what I did, leaving them stranded, had just made everything worse. She was apologetic for that. But she also told me she wanted me to keep my distance for a while. She said she couldn't call me regularly to talk about life like we used to, not for now. Not while her relationship with David was so fraught. To know that I wouldn't be able to have the same relationship with her ever again, for the foreseeable future, all because of him, it stung deeply. It sucked. But I told her I understood. We had a really awkward, cold hug. If I'm being honest, I wish she'd just not contacted me at all, hadn't bothered to apologize. Because her apology, her explanation, it just made me feel worse. It made me feel like I was losing the only part of my childhood, my best friend, my mom, to this new family of hers. To this man who clearly didn't value her or me. It hurts. But there's not much I can do, is there? She's the one who wants to pick her husband and her stepkids over me. So, really, what can I even do? I'll just try to enjoy the rest of my stay here. I'm paying a bomb to stay at this expensive hotel, so I might as well make the most of it. That's that. Hi everyone. So I came back home from my Greek adventure about 3 days ago. I'm supposed to resume work tomorrow. I genuinely tried to make the best of my solo trip, and for the most part, it was quite fun. I almost forgot about the whole situation with my mother. Until last night, I heard from my grandparents. My mother has decided to leave her husband. Apparently they were going through a really bad phase even before the Greece trip, and my actions and David's subsequent abusive behavior towards her made them both realize that they couldn't work things out anymore. The family that she had put me second to, the family she had chosen over me, is now no longer hers. Which is a little strange and sad to think about. She picked them over me, and now she doesn't even have them anymore. We haven't spoken since she left me at the hotel that last day she visited. I haven't tried to reach out to her either because, honestly, it just seemed pointless after a while. I was having fun on my trip, and even after coming back I didn't really think of her much. A couple of times, yes, but she hadn't talked to me, so I hadn't tried to talk to her either. I didn't want to force my presence someplace where I wasn't wanted, and she'd made it very clear that she didn't want to talk to me at that moment. Maybe she won't change her mind in the future either, from the looks of it. I mean, she didn't even tell me that she decided to file for divorce. That's pretty big news, or so I think. This is pretty much the end of the road for my mother and me. Hypothetically, even if we do reconcile someday, things will never be the way they used to be. And I'm okay with that now, because I was a good daughter to her. I tried my best until I felt like I couldn't anymore. So, I'm cool with whatever happens now. And I wish the best for her because I'm too old to hold grudges against anyone, let alone my own mom. I'll try to move past this as well now, I guess. My journey of individuation from her, and from the unhealthy dynamics of our past, has been accelerated by this whole ordeal. It's painful, but also in a strange way, liberating. I'm building my own life, on my own terms, and that's a strength no one can take away from me.